Music has been a part of my life. I couldn't live without it, I don't think. The first instrument I ever worked on was a guitar that my grandfather gave me. And it was a pretty beat up old thing, so I tried to clean it up and managed to get some new tuning gears for it. And my mother helped me string it up and taught me my first chords. My grandfather gave me his old banjo. He said he bought it from a sailorman in 1902. And later, in trying to do some research on it, I realized it was Civil War vintage. I still have that, and I play it now and then. Music was always part of the house. In the summertime, they would practice on the front porch because the house was too hot to be inside. And the neighbors would come and sit on the lawn and have their supper and listen to the music. You know, my Uncle Gus was an oyster fisherman up in the Delaware Bay in New Jersey. And he had this lovely old schooner. And I'm over in the corner plunking on the banjo, not paying a lot of attention. And my dad asked him what he did after the oyster season was over. And he said, well, he took people out deep sea fishing. And he looked over at me and he says, I need a banjo picker this summer. Do you want to come and work for me? Sure. I'm thinking he wanted me to entertain his fishing guests. Well, we get up there, it's a very hot day, and he takes me down to the town of Biography where the shucking houses are, where they take the oysters out of the shells. So he took me out to this pile of reeking oyster shells and handed me a big scoop shovel, and he said, here's your banjo, start picking. And thinking about those days, I wrote this song called The Lady Ray. That was the name of his schooner. Wait a minute. Get a little faster here. There we go. Rolling down the Jersey coast in the schooner Lady Ray, running from Stone Harbor down around Cape May. The lee rail dipping in the waves in a steady... I went down in the mines with Dad a couple of times, and that taught me to never go in the mines. I didn't want to be a miner. This is a song I wrote for my dad. My grandpa was a woodsman, and my dad was for a time. But when the mills closed down, he took a job down in the mine. He ran the Jeffrey motor that pulled the coal cars out. And during this time, my mother, at first she had her own radio show. And then she later joined her brother's band, my Uncle Dorse. He lived next door to us. And he wrote a song called The Scared Coal Miner, and it got so popular, he changed the name of his band from the Shady Mountain Boys to Dorsey Lewis, The Scared Coal Miner. And I can remember them recording on a wire recorder. It had a spool of copper wire, and they would record on that. And then later they had one that would make a record. And I got to travel with them, and I met a lot of the old-time country singers like Doc Watson, Little Jimmy Dickens, Hawkshaw Hawkins, Minnie Pearl, Grandpa Jones, and Uncle Dave Macon. I met all of them. And occasionally I'd get to sing with them too. And I won my first talent show when I was 9 years old, singing one of Uncle Dorse's songs. Growing up in a rural area in West Virginia, in a mining town, we didn't have money to pay people to do things, and even if there was somebody around that could do it, so we had to learn to do it ourselves. My grandfather taught me how to braid leather and how to weave cane seats in chairs and rush and splint bottoms. So everybody had their own talents, and they passed them down in the oral tradition. When I graduated from high school, I wanted to be a commercial artist. And I was accepted at the Meinzinger Art School in Detroit. And so I went there. But this was a time when West Virginia was decreasing in population because of the cheap Arab oil being imported. And so people were leaving in droves to find work. And I couldn't even find a job washing dishes. and my dad wasn't working. He couldn't help me, so I took my bedroll on my back and hit the road for a couple of years and roamed around the country. I would just go until I ran out of money, and I'd find something to do, some kind of a job, work for a while and get some money in my pocket and take off again. And I was in 47 different states in 2 years.
It's time to hit the road again. I don't know or care just where I'm going, but I can always find a friend. Well, I don't mind bending a little for you, but I'd be bent double when you got through, so it's time to hit the road again. Your daddy called me.
But I made it back home after a while, and a buddy of mine had his own airplane, a Cessna 182. So we took off. We spent 3 months. We flew up to the Canadian border and out to the West Coast and down the West Coast, clear into Mexico, down to the Gulf of Mexico, down in Florida Keys and back up the East Coast. Logged 11,000 air miles. And we took the back seat out of the plane and put our camping gear in there, and we'd land sod fields. Had a lot of fun in that old Cessna. Every place I've ever been, it seemed like a temporary existence. I've never felt a permanent home place. In the back of my mind, it's like there's more out there to see, and I need to go see it. It's kind of a hackneyed word, but the wanderlust has always been on me. I worked on ranches. I worked in a blacksmith shop in Klamath Falls. I worked on ships. I worked in the ironworks in Galveston, Texas. Done a little of everything. I even went on an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, one trip.
It's time to hit the road again. I don't know or care just where I'm going.
They flew us out in helicopters and made a good chunk of money, but about killed me. And that's when I left Galveston. Always loved horses. My grandfather farmed with horses and mules. He farmed 80 acres and never owned a tractor or an automobile in his life. I'd buy old saddles that needed repaired and fix them up and sell them. I built flintlock rifles and pistols. I couldn't afford the nice guns, so I would buy the derelicts that the collectors didn't want and take them apart and fix them up. So I learned how to make them, how the old-timers put them together. Then I started building my own. And I never bought kits. I just bought the barrels and locks and made all the other parts myself. I learned how to make spurs, hand-forged spurs in bits. And then I'd make the leather straps for them. I would go to the rodeos with my buddies. 2 of them were bull riders and 2 of them were saddle bronc riders. And I made my own chaps, and I actually made 10 times more money selling my chaps than I did riding horses at the rodeo. I don't know how many pairs of bull riding chaps I made, probably over 100. Okay. This is a song that I started many years ago, and I never could finish it until I met Joanna. All I ever wanted was to sing my songs, but there was no one I could sing them to. Everyone who stopped there listened said, well, that's nice, but ain't there something else that you can do? You can't make a living hanging around them 2-bit bars, singing your homemade songs and playing your guitar. That's all right for laughs or maybe for a beer or 2, but there must be something else that you can do. You could go to work for Uncle Charlie selling shoes. Maybe at the car wash they could use a man like you. You can't get ahead singing bluegrass or the blues. There must be something else that you can do. Friends and family are the most important things in life. Everything else is superfluous. It doesn't, except for music. I like music. Marrying Joanna and having my son Jesse and my children. I have 3 daughters and my son, and I have an adopted son, lives back in Virginia. He came out for a visit this summer and brought his little 5-year-old granddaughter.
And she's a swimming champ. She would come in every morning and say, "Grandpa, I want chocolate pancakes for breakfast." So I'd have to make chocolate pancakes for her. I always admired Joanna because no matter what I was doing, she was always ready to lend a hand to help. Didn't matter how strenuous the job was, she was there to help. And so I try to do the same for her. I had an antique shop in Moss Landing, California, down in Monterey Bay. And she had a stained glass studio next door, and that's where we met. I started helping her mud the windows, waterproofing them. And then I would help her install the windows. And pretty soon we got together, and we're still together. It's been a long time, but time flies when you're having fun.
I sang in pizza parlors, restaurants, and a few nightclubs. Barely made enough to keep my head above the flood. Tried to give up writing and put it all away, but the songs still kept coming anyway. Then you came along and put new meaning to my life. I charmed you with a song and you said you'd be my wife. Now it doesn't matter if my ship never comes home, 'cause I've got someone to listen to my song. Couldn't work for Charlie 'cause I never could sell shoes. The guys down at the car wash are still singing the blues, but I'm still making music and writing new songs. That's all I ever really want to do.
The true Celtic knot, you can start at any point and trace it, and you'll eventually come back to where you started without a break. I've been making things all my life, but I always like working with my hands, with wood and leather and metal. I tried a little silversmithing for a while. I didn't really start building instruments until much later. I was living down in Watsonville, California, and I met a man in Santa Cruz named Ray Popelka, and he made the most beautiful Appalachian dulcimers. And he taught me how to make them, and I went on to make a few more after that. I've made a fiddle, made dulcimers, I made a harp, and I've restored a number of instruments. I made this case for my dulcimer that I made, and I told this scene on the top here. It's a story of my grandfather told me how he met my grandmother. They normally have a violin skull at the head, but I found a squirrel in there and cut away all the pieces that didn't look like a squirrel. It's just a good feeling to create something different and something useful. A musical instrument or a muzzle-loading rifle, leather goods, paintings. It just gives me a great satisfaction to create something that has some aesthetic value.
System as your reflection system, which is cool. I mean, I don't care. Somebody's making some money.
Working with Glenn Justus, that has just been such a ride, such an amazing experience. So I go to the VFW. Then I was approached by Glenn Justus, who has just become such a wonderful friend to me. And he told me about this weekly guitar group that gets together.
Chinese song called Tuning.
Oh, that's your new guitar that you won.
Yeah.
That's cool. Nice.
Where'd you win that?
Acoustic Guitar Magazine.
How cool.
They said enter to win, so I entered and I won. I can't see this thing. There you go.
Best looking music stand I've ever seen. City sidewalks, busy sidewalks, dressed in holiday style. In the air, there's a feeling of Christmas.
I think we met through a mutual friend who was an antique dealer, and then we started doing guitar nights. And, Glenn was the gift that just keeps on giving, and he's so talented. Obviously, he had an artist's tone, he had a poet's touch. Just a beautiful guy to get to know. And he came over to guitar night, and we've been friends ever since for at least 30 years, if not longer.
Isn't that a beauty?
I ordered a black pickguard.
You old horse trader.
Well, I did some more horse trading after this one.
Of course he did.
I got number 17. It's a Red Dobro.
Ooh. When do we get to hear that?
As soon as I learn how to play.
You were the first person I made a friend of when I moved to the Basin all those many years ago. It's because of you I have the guitar I have, many of the songs I have. We miss you.
Hey Glenn, we miss you. Thanks for being my friend.
We became fast friends from the start. We went to Willie Nelson, we went to Brandi Carlile, numerous other concerts, and the greatest part of that, besides the music, were the stories that I got to hear from Glenn. He was a man of many experiences, many adventures, and a lot of misadventures along the way. And he had me in stitches a lot of the time, telling the great stories that he always told. And he was just a great friend, a calming influence, and I just loved the man. His music talent was beyond belief, and I'll miss him a lot.
Just us.
Okay, guys, Carl Phillips and Glenn Justus.
I think today the sun is shining just for me. I've known some gray skies, but this ain't gonna be one of those days when all it does is rain. You were long gone, and I can live on. I think today the sun is shining just for me.
I met him back in, I guess, the mid-90s. We had a shared interest in music and muzzle-loading rifles, so we went on from there. I'd go over and play on Sunday afternoons, we'd swap songs back and forth, and I'd played a lot of backups to his stuff. Yeah, we'd go over to Phil's Tuesday nights a lot of times, show up over there and play, and if he wrote a new song, he'd call me up and read me the lyrics, and then we'd get together on the weekend and work it out. It was a lot of fun.
And we had some rodeo history together. I was 15 years later than he was, so we never met during the rodeo years, but just that camaraderie of rodeo riders is always a strong bond, and so we like to visit about the old times a little bit. So had a great time. I was blessed to know Glenn.
I said, what'd you do during Woodstock? Glenn, he said, I was doing the rodeo or something like that. And I was like, what? And so I started asking him questions about that. The guy did a lot of worldly things. We didn't know that part of him. We know the musician. I miss him. Yeah, I miss him a lot.
Half the audience was musicians. They'd either just played or they're waiting their turn to play. So Glenn gets up there with a banjolin that he's built, right? And he stands there looking out over his friends in the audience. He says, you know what perfect pitch is? That's when you throw a banjo down a mine shaft and miss all the accordions.
He was probably mistaken for Paul Bunyan from time to time when he was younger. He had hands the size of catcher's mitts. I mean, he was a big man, and he'd done some big things in his life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Glenn's gonna break the ice.
These are for breakfast. I'm too full to eat now.
I'm gonna have breakfast now. I met Glenn up at Phil's house, like many people did. He's a good guy. If you needed something, he was there. He will be missed.
miss you, Glenn, and still listening to your CDs in the office, and I think about you often.
Glenn, I'm glad to be a part of this celebration for you. Thanks for being an inspiration. I love you, man.
I loved Glenn Justus. Thank you so much for being a part of our life here in Klamath Falls, and thank you for the things that you contributed to me personally. You know what they are.
I don't know if you could be a more full human being.
Like, how many people do so many things? How many people are like a Renaissance man like him? A real one in a million, you know, so it was an honor, privilege, you know, to cross paths with him a little bit.
What's the rest of it?
I thought I was the only one that did that.
Yeah, there.
What's worse is when it's when you're
It's bad when you forget your own song.
Oh well, please don't sing me a love song. That would only make me sad. I got the blues down deep in my soul. The blues ain't nothing but a good man feeling bad. The blues ain't nothing but a good man feeling bad. The blues ain't nothing but a good man feeling bad.
Best looking music stand I've ever seen.
City sidewalks, busy sidewalks, dressed in holiday style. In the air, there's a feeling of Christmas. Children laughing.
It's just a great feeling to be able to make music with my friends.
Silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells. It's Christmas time in the city.
Ring-a-ling,
Ring-a-ling,
hear them sing,
hear them sing. Soon it will be Christmas Day.
String of street lights, even stoplights, brink of light red and green, as the shoppers rush home with their treasures. Hear the snow crunch, see the kids bunch. This is Santa's great scene, and above all this bustle you'll hear silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells. It's Christmas time in the city.
Ring-a-ling,
Ring-a-ling,
hear them sing,
hear them sing. Soon it will be Christmas Day.
silver bells,
Silver bells,
silver bells,
silver bells. It's Christmas time in the city.
Ring-a-ling,
Ring-a-ling,
hear them sing,
hear them sing. Soon it will be Christmas Day.